know I was planning on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, look at you.
I'm actually very proud of you, Mr. Chairman, honestly.
Okay, so one, we'll always check before we're doing stuff, but just always do that sine 90, make sure you're in the right mode. It should say degrees or have a little d. So this is how we plug in an angle. So if it says sine theta, it's easy. You literally just plug in sine theta. So that one's not bad because you don't really have to do anything fancy. In a minute, we are going to have to do something fancy, so I'll show you. If I said right now, find sine of 49.2 degrees, can you find what that is?
0.756995055.
Beautiful. So just to keep, so we don't need to write the whole thing out because that would be highly irritating. We are going to round to the thousandths, which is 3 decimal places. So please round correctly. So it was 0.75, what was it?
69.
Okay, so I'm gonna round it to 0.757 because the 6 should round up. So we don't want to round the whole thing. 3 decimal places is fine.
I'm actually pretty good at this.
I'm really proud that you could plug that into the calculator. I'm beaming with pride. So sine, pretty easy because you have the button right there. Same thing with cosine. You don't have to do anything too fancy. You just, if it says cosine, you plug in cosine. So if I said, hey, what's the cosine of 41.53 degrees? What would it be? Round it to 3 decimal places.
49.3, you said?
41.5.
Oh, my bad.
0.749.
Beautiful. 0.749, 0.749.
That's exactly what I had.
And tangent, once again, nothing too exciting because you have a tangent button right in front of you. So you just throw it in. So if I said, what's the tangent of 92.6? What would it be?
Whoa. Negative 22.023. I rounded it.
3.
I mean,
Isn't it
2.
2? Yeah.
Yeah, 2.
Okay. So I always like sine, cosine, tangent because the buttons are right there. You just kind of throw them in. So here's the issue. If it's asking you for cosecant, life isn't as easy now because there's.
I know how to do this.
Oh, how?
This is Steve just taught me.
Okay.
Alright, so you press the sin and then like an arrow, right? And
No,
then you put in-
That's for something different. That's for something called the inverse, which we'll do in a second. Cosecant, I don't know why they just make the cosecant button calculators, come on. But there's no cosecant button, unfortunately. We do know that cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, so we can always flip sine to go get cosecant. We are going to do the same thing in the calculator. If it says cosecant theta, we're gonna plug that in as 1 over sine theta. So, if I said, what is the cosecant of 145.1? In your calculator, you would say, no button. How do I do it? The reciprocal. You would write 1 over sine 145.1. What do you got?
1.748.
Beautiful. It should come out to 1.748.
How do you write a fraction in the calculator?
You just do divide by.
Oh, okay. So like 1
Divided
divided by sine.
Yep,
And
145.1.
And just press enter.
You got it.
Hey, I got it.
1.748.
Yep.
Beautiful. Now, are you going to remember that on Friday?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's easy.
because on Friday you have some calculator stuff. So I don't see a lot of people writing stuff.
I want to go. Right.
Yeah, there you go.
Wait, is this on my phone? I'm just making sure it's on my phone.
So,
It is.
I will expect you to remember this. And when we do a few things, so it might be wise to write it down. I am being nice and I did put my notes up on Google Classroom. So please, if you forget, you can always refer to that. But if you're gonna forget something, we know we don't see each other for a while here. It's easy to forget over a few days. So please write it down.
This is Sherman.
What's up?
What's sine H?
It's like when you have a parabola, I think.
It's like sine H, just SA.
Yeah, and we never use that one.
Okay, because I was gonna say.
You use it more in, you would use it in calculus.
I got 2 calculators right here. On my phone.
Okay, secant, once again, there's no secant button, so we would do the reciprocal, which is 1 over cosine. So if I said, hey, what's the secant of 13.6 degrees? You would say, oh, no button, use the reciprocal. That's 1 over cosine 13.6 degrees. And then you just throw it in your calculator. It's just really, all of this is putting it in your calculator. It's just for some of them, you need to know the steps. And that should come out to 1.029. Did I even get that?
What?
Okay.
1.5.
Yeah, fine. And you can probably guess for cotangent, there's no cotangent button.
So it's the same thing, right?
But same idea, you're just gonna do the reciprocal, which is 1 over tangent. So if I say find the cotangent of 184.6 degrees, these are all degrees that we're plugging in.
12.429.
Look at you. Yep, so do 1 over tangent of that. And that comes out to 12.429. Beautiful. So the reason we're doing this now is because we are going to be doing some solving next week, and we need to be able to solve using our calculator, finding answers. So these trig functions will pop up, so it will be of use to us to know how to figure them out in the calculator. All right, so I'm just gonna give you a few to try. This is one of those things, making sure you're okay with using the calculator in general. There is something else we are going to do, which is going to be finding an angle. In that case, we're given an angle, so I will show you how to do that in a minute. But I'll give you a few to try first. There is something I wanted to remind you of, and this number 1 here. Give me a second. Let me just write them down, and then I want to remind you of something. So in your calculator, you're evaluating these. I know I'm in the way, I'm gonna move in a second. All right, so we have a few things you guys, I just want you guys are gonna practice a little. Hey, number 1 says sine of 42 degrees, 18 minutes.
Yeah.
We do not write that as 42.18, no way. How do I convert a minute to a decimal?
Then you like add 1 and subtract 60 or something.
Something with 60, what do I do with 60?
I totally forgot what to change. Like I have to be really
My heart just starts a little bit. What you're going to do is if you ever see a minute, you put it over 60. Remember that?
Oh yeah.
So what I would usually do first is I would grab my calculator and I would do, what's 18 over 60? It's 0.3. So I would rewrite this as 42.3. And then I would plug it in. But those minutes kind of just randomly pop up. I know they're in a few of your examples later in the week, so I wanted to remind you of it. If you ever see a minute and you need to convert it to a decimal, you divide it by 60. And then I'll give you the decimal. So why don't you try 1 through 6? Are you okay with plugging into a calculator? Is there anything kind of funky? We'll check them quick in a minute too, just to make sure you're on the right track.
I already did it all.
Yeah, they should be quick. So
Yeah,
I'll just give you a minute or two. I'm just give me attendance. Peeps at home. few more seconds, I'm just gonna put those. 10 by 10. So I always like sine, cosine, tangent, because you just kind of throw them in. Just be careful if there is a minute there that you convert first. And then just make sure for cosecant, secant, and cotangent, you are using the reciprocals, because unfortunately, with all the technology in the world, they can't just make a button for it. I don't know why. It'll make our life tricky. So number one, you should have got 0.673. We're rounding to 3 decimal places, please round correctly. That should be negative 0.379. This was 0.026. I did have to convert this, so I did over 60. It ended up being tangent of 1.5. And what was cosecant? That was 1.221. This I converted, I put that over 60. I don't know what that is off the top of my head, but you can do it. That came out to negative 1.182. And the last one was negative 7.357.
Yeah. All in my head, I
Did you
literally.
memorize all the answers?
Yeah. Alright, name one right now.
Close your eyes.
Okay. Adam, name one. Number 5, that's
Oh,
no, secant. Oh, that's the maybe the cosine, right?
So, notes. This part, I will let you know, when we do the cosecant, secant, cotangent, a lot of people mess this part up because they forget it, because let's be honest, between now and Friday, you're probably not gonna do a lot of calculator work. So I would highly suggest you would write down this part. I highly suggest you write down this part.
I got a question.
What?
After we do these, after we write this down, may I please use the restroom?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I highly suggest you write down this part, because this is a part where in the past, people just always make the same mistakes. Marker is just not up to my writing standards right now. Okay, so what happens is sometimes we need to find an angle, whereas in the first section we were given an angle. And if you ever need to find an angle, we use something called the inverse. Okay. So if I say that sine theta equals something, I'm just gonna write equals a number, so there'll be some number.
90.
No.
Jeez. Ruthless, man.
If you need to find theta, you find theta by doing the inverse sine of the number. So, we need to find our inverse sine is in our calculator. Usually, if you're looking at your calculator, if you find your sine button, like right above it, it will say inverse sine. It looks like sine with a little -1, that means inverse. So the way that you do that is you either hit shift or second. And it should pop up with a sign with a little -1. So let's do one with an example and see if we can kind of figure it out. So if I say find theta, if sine theta equals 0.968, you would plug that in your calculator as the inverse sine of 0.968. So you can't just use the regular sign, but you have to use that one with a little -1. So a lot of times you'll hit second or shift or
I
depending.
got syntax error.
Oh, okay, so you did it wrong.
Yeah.
I got 75.466.
Yep, 75.466, you got it.
I'm very friendly.
And we just found an angle, so you would label that with a degree symbol. Let me see what you plugged in there.
Right above the sign. I hit this.
No, like here. So you hit shift.
Oh, that's smart. And then what do I do? 0.9.
0.968.
I got that same exact thing.
Beautiful. So cosine and tangent are very similar. So if I have cosine theta equals a number, to find theta, I'm gonna just do the inverse cosine of that number. So let's look at a quick example. If I said find theta, and cosine theta was equal to 0.921, what would theta be?
22.9272.
We'll still round to 3 decimals.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm doing the inverse cosine of 0.921. When I label my answer, there is a degree symbol with it because I just found an angle. Once again, tangent should be pretty quick because you have the nice little button there for it. It's just when we get to the other three that it can be a little tricky. So in this one, if I said find theta and tangent theta equals 6.436, what would theta be?
I think Adam got it. Adam?
Oh, I think I just have it. I got 81.168.
You didn't.
Told you the wrong name back there.
So once again, when you have sine, cosine, tangent, or the intermediate inverse, they're pretty easy because you just have the button right there. It's when you get to the other three that this one can get a little confusing. So when I have cosecant of theta equals a number, unfortunately, there's no inverse cosecant sign. So to find theta, you are going to do the inverse sine of 1 over the number. What people want to do, this is why it gets confusing, people want to do 1 over the inverse sine. You can't do that, it's not gonna work. So this is where I highly suggest you write at least that one down. Because if you do it the wrong way, then you're just kind of toasty there. So if I say find theta, when cosecant theta equals 4.722. In your calculator, you're gonna say, ooh, there's no cosecant button. So to find theta, I'm gonna do the inverse sine of 1 over 4.722. So a lot of people wanna do 1 over the inverse sine, do not do that. What do you get as an answer? Anyone yell it out?
I'm talking cool difficulties.
Why?
Keep saying syntax error.
You put inverse sine,
Yeah.
1 divided by 4.722.
Syntax error. I know, right? Just showing me, I'm very
No, it's
slow.
fine.
I'm just super slow.
Yeah. So the inverse sine of 1, sometimes it's like different things that you might need like parentheses, of 1 over.
Syntax error?
You don't need parentheses, let me try. It's just sometimes it's different. That's why we practice. Okay, you need to put parentheses around that. So check your answer because like in that calculator, if you didn't put parentheses around the 1 divided by whatever, it came out to the wrong answer. So yeah, like throw parentheses around that part. Your answer should be 12.226. Parentheses are your friend. So you can probably guess from that one what the other ones are gonna look like. Secant of an angle, if it's equal to a number, to find the angle, you're going to do the inverse cosine of 1 over the number. So just as a quick thing, if I say secant theta equals 1.054. You would say, okay, secant, I don't have that button. So to find theta, I'm gonna do the inverse cosine. Use parentheses, I always just use them, just in case, because especially with some calculators, they get a little bit picky. So try it now with parentheses, inverse cosine of 1 over 1.054. Anyone get an answer?
18.4.
As if put 4.2, yeah.
Exactly what I have.
Huh?
Exactly what I have.
Okay, perfect. So reminder, things can get a little bit, this stuff can be easy to forget, and I understand that. So please make sure if you think you will forget how to do that on Friday, because your assignment Friday will have to do with calculator stuff, that you do write it down. And then just one more, I like to do one of each. Cotangent theta is equal to a number. If you want to find theta, you're going to do the inverse tangent of 1 over the number. So once you see one, they kind of follow the same pattern. So just one more example. Whenever I need to find theta, I'm going to use an inverse. So this is going to be inverse tangent of 1 over 1.447. Use those parentheses if you're scared it won't give you the right answer. That one I got 34.648.
0.6. Can I use the restroom?
Yeah. So our main goal, depending on what we're finding in the future, sometimes we'll find maybe the side of a triangle, sometimes we might find the angle of a triangle. You will have to use your calculator a little bit differently. So just make sure you know all that fun stuff, especially the stuff with cosecant, secant, cotangent, since they do not have specific buttons. So I'm gonna give you one of each to try, and then that will be our last thing. No school tomorrow, so I won't see you. Thursday, you are filling in the rest of that chart from yesterday. And then Friday, you're just doing some calculator stuff, so hopefully nothing too terrible. And then I'll see you again next week. So for all of these, you're finding theta. Sorry, I know I'm in the way, I will move in a second. Be ready to. So just in general, make sure you're okay with plugging in. If you forgot something from 3 minutes ago, there's a good chance you'll forget it on Friday. So maybe just give yourself some quick notes about what you may need calculator-wise. I'm just gonna throw the answers up, so just make sure as you're plugging things in, you're getting the correct answer. That's the main thing for today, and then hopefully you can use that same process. So number one should have been 48.245. These answers should have degree symbols with them because they are angles that we're finding. Number two was 83.569 degrees. Number three was 69.496 degrees. And then these are the ones you have to kind of be careful with, so that came out to 24.778 degrees, 73.724 degrees, and 10.79 degrees.
It says error.
Okay, let me come check. Sometimes it's just like, yeah, like a set of parentheses or